and bought all their stock. So there's more money being given to these two groups, and they're wanting to give more money. It's the same with the car companies, but nobody wants to hear the tough love. And the tough love is we're going to have to allow bad businesses to fail, even large bad businesses. But out of it, sometimes good happens. Fruit of the Loom went bankrupt in Bowling Green. It was sad. People lost their jobs. But it became a lean, mean fighting company again, and Warren Buffett bought it. So now it's a company that's thriving, and sometimes that's what has to happen. We have it in our Republican platform that says we don't believe that private businesses should be bailed out. It's part of our platform. So the people who voted for the bailout, George Bush went along with it. He says, my gut instinct was to be for the free market, but my advisors told me I had to do it, so I chucked it. You know, and unfortunately, that's not what we need. We need people who have an ideological basis, who believe in something and have answers. We have to have answers because during the Great Depression, we lost the battle, not only during the Depression, but after the Depression. The people who wrote the history textbooks blamed capitalism. They blamed greedy speculators. You still see that. I was in the airport the other day, in Condé Nast magazine. Greed and stupidity caused this crisis. Well, you know, if greed and stupidity caused the crisis, how did all the mortgage brokers and the people buying houses all become greedy or stupid all at one time? To me, that's a lame argument. It's sort of what they call an ad hominem argument. It's attacking people. They're not analyzing what happened. What happened over the past 5 years? The Federal Reserve reduced the interest rate to 0 right after the dot-com crisis because they did not want to suffer a recession. And they did avoid a recession, but they did by creating a bubble. And so people borrowed, and you could sell a house, a $100,000 house with no down payment, and a year later it's worth $120,000. Well, why don't you borrow $20,000 and put a pool in now? You could do it because the price of homes was rising. From the Great Depression until 2006, the median price of homes went up every year. Never went down 1 year in 60 years. So were they stupid? They got careless, but they were always betting on profit. And all the mortgage people did was follow a curve. It's the price curve of homes. They were following the curve of homes. But we have to ask ourselves, why did the curve accelerate so greatly? Why were home prices going up at a dramatic, almost exponential rate? They've been going up like this for 60 years. In the last 3 or 4 years, they went up like this, almost a straight up curve. And you got all this speculation going. So is it because people are greedy or stupid or speculating? That's not it. They were basing it on bad information, and the bad information was interest rates. I tell people that interest rates are like, in medicine we have something called homeostasis. Homeostasis means that the body generally tends to have checks and balances and maintain an equilibrium. So when you eat food like we've all done, if we're not diabetic, our insulin's going through the roof right now, trying to bring our blood sugars down. And it will normalize, and then your insulin rate will drop. It's the same way that interest rates are supposed to work in the marketplace. But because interest rates are controlled by the government, the Federal Reserve, we got in this problem. Now, why is that important? Is that just sort of an academic discussion? No, it's important because if we blame greed and stupidity, we're indirectly blaming the freedom to be stupid, and we're blaming greed, which is self-interest, which is profit, which drives capitalism. Greed is just a bad name for self-interest. If we're all doing well and we make profit, we call it profit. If someone makes a lot of it and we either don't like them or the economy goes to sale, we've got greed then. But we need to understand that's not an argument. And also, if we accept that greed and stupidity cause this, we accept that the answer is more government and that capitalism has let us down. We allowed that to happen in the 30s, and we got a gradual encroachment of 60-odd years of government getting bigger and bigger and more intrusive. There's a writer, George Reisman, who writes in defense of capitalism, and he got his PhD under von Mises, a famous free market economist, and he was a colleague of Ayn Rand. And he writes that for them to blame capitalism is not only wrong and erroneous, it is just so misguided to not even be anywhere near being true. Of the 15 cabinet-level positions we have in Washington, 9 of them, their job is to regulate the economy. Of those 9 cabinet-level positions, they all have hundreds of different agencies. Any of you who are in business know that there's a plethora of agencies controlling every one of our economic activities. So we don't blame it on capitalism. We don't have capitalism in our country. We don't have socialism. We're somewhere in the middle. But what I fear is, you see the front page of Newsweek, we're all socialists now. When we give up and give in as a party and allow our people, that's the problem now. When Obama gets up and he says, Who are those Republicans to complain about spending? You know, they ran the deficit up from $5 to $10 trillion, and he's exactly right. We lost our credibility. And that's part of the reason why we need new blood in Washington, because the people who voted for all of Bush's deficits have not a leg to stand on. When Obama says that, they say, oh, now they're against deficit spending, but they weren't when they were in control. That's a problem for us as a party, and we are shrinking around the country. And if we want to grow again as a party, we have to become believable, and some of that's going to be meeting new people in Washington. They blamed greed and stupidity. The other one they blamed was liquidity. And I'm not an economist. I kind of think I'm well-read, but I didn't really know what that meant, so I kind of read a little bit about it. And liquidity, they mean not enough money. But what does that mean? We just print more money, put it in the marketplace, and then we'll be fine? One of the best analysis of liquidity I read was by Anna Schwartz. She's 93 years old, still goes to the office every day, and she wrote most of the historical economic textbooks with Milton Friedman. She was the co-author, not as well known. They're a very bright lady. And she says that Bernanke's got it completely wrong. Bernanke says it's like the Great Depression, we have a liquidity crisis, but in the Great Depression, for anybody whose parents can remember it, people did take the money out of banks and they stuck it in their mattress. But what Anna Schwartz says is they're not doing that now. You may have gotten out of the stock market, you may have gotten out of banks, you put it in something more conservative. So there's a ton of money out there that's buying treasury bonds, but you're not buying commercial paper. The reason commercial paper is not being bought is you don't trust the asset sheets. No one trusts the banks. But the money is not completely out of the system. It's just sitting over here waiting in treasury bills to be invested. So what Anna Schwartz says, and we have to know this may sound boring and like, you know, we have to know these answers or we just give up and we just get more of what we're going to get from Obama. The answer is that there's a crisis of confidence. How do you solve the crisis of confidence in the asset sheets of commercial paper and banks? The assets have to be sold. Sometimes that's through liquidation. You find out if anybody really knows what a credit default swap is or what it's worth, it has to be sold. It might be worth 50 cents, it might be worth 20 cents on the dollar, 10 cents on the dollar, but it has to be sold in order to figure out what it's worth. For the government to buy it all up in what's called a bad bank or stick it over here, more money thrown after bad because we don't know what it's worth. A lot of them don't even know what it is. So it's not greed, it's not stupidity, it's not lack of liquidity. The other thing they say is, well, Wall Street was unregulated. We need more regulations. We've got to go after them. Well, in 1999, they did pass a bill, and some people call this deregulation. It was the Phil Graham, Bliley, somebody else Act. And it was to repeal the Glass-Steagall Act, which had been in place from the Depression, which had prevented branch banking. And it also created the derivative market and the credit default swap market. Well, what I'll tell you is, and this is a philosophy my father takes in Washington, he says if they wanted to repeal that, they could have done it in one page. He's famous for introducing one-page bills. Because he says, everybody should read it, we should have a debate, and you know what's in the bill. It was 1 or 2 pages, just like the stimulus and all these packages were 3 pages and grew to 1,000. This one grew to 900 pages, and he ended up voting no on it, and he always votes yes and it deregulates. So your question is, did we really get deregulation, or as my father called it, we got re-regulation? It's important because if we got deregulation, then the blame is on capitalism again. It's on free markets, it's on free individuals. If it was simply re-regulation and derivatives and credit default swaps and all these crazy investments came about because of a specially created government sort of niche through new regulations, then it's government's fault, it's not the marketplace's fault. It's a blame game, and we need to know where to assess the blame, and we need to assess it accurately if we truly believe as Republicans in limited government because it's slipping away from us. Now, all this could have been